All righty, let's talk more about this with Billy Graham's granddaughter and a key member of President Trump's Faith Advisory Council, Cissy Graham Lynch, as well as CEO and president of the LGBTQ media advocacy organization GLAAD, Sarah Kate Ellis. Ladies, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So, Cissy, I know that you were at the signing at the White House. You're on the president's advisory boards. What kind of conversations did you have with the president? What did he ask you?
Well, after the executive order was signed there in the Rose Garden, my father, Franklin Graham, and I went into his office, and I thanked him. I thanked him for taking a bold stand for religious freedoms. There are controversies that the executive order didn't go far enough, but I disagree. I think that this was a great first step. There was an underlining message and a tone set by our President of the United States that says people of faith, they will not be bullied, they will not be targeted, and they will not be silenced anymore. And that's for people of all faiths. Were represented on that stage. There were Hindu, Muslim, Jews, Catholics, evangelicals. So it is important as a Christian and as a believer in Jesus Christ. I don't want anybody persecuted for their faith, but especially for Christians last week, it was a huge message sent because we have been targeted over the last few years.
Sarah, you had a swift response on Twitter. You said, today's executive order stopped short of rampant discrimination, but don't be fooled. This begins a slippery slope of a hashtag license to discriminate. Based on what you just heard from Cissy, talk to me about that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I think what we want to talk about is actually what this narrative is. We're saying religious freedom. Religious freedom is baked into the Constitution of America. So that's not up for debate. What we're talking about is actually a license to discriminate against women, against LGBTQ people. And this was the first step in what I say is a really big backlash against marginalized groups in America, especially LGBTQ people. And the future of this and what we see coming down the pike and what we're most concerned about is that people are going to be able to deny really life-saving health care access, be able to deny housing, deny jobs, fire us from our jobs. If my wife and I take our kid we have an 8-year-old, with ill, to the hospital, some talk of the executive order that's sitting on the president's desk right now, doctors could deny our child life-saving medical help in a moment's notice. And so to me, that's not religious freedom. What that is discrimination based on the fact that I'm married to a woman.
So Cissy, when you hear her talk about that, and you talk about the fact that this is just a first step, what would you say to Kate in that regard, in terms of what you want to happen and the discrimination she feels? I mean, the interesting thing is you're both sitting here talking about feeling discriminated against.
I don't want anybody to be discriminated against. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, who has loved the entire world, and he loves us all. I don't want, depending on your faith or whoever you are, to be discriminated against. And last Thursday, that's not what this was about. The Johnson Amendment that was imposed by Lyndon Johnson because a pastor came after him back in the 50s, and he did not like it, and he set that in order. But even my family, my father, both of his organizations have been targeted by the IRS. On the same day has gotten a letter from the IRS to be audited, and he had to spend lots of money, of donors' money, to prepare for that audit. That's not a coincidence that they both came on the same day. So this was a huge step for the evangelicals who in the last 8 years have been targeted against the Obama administration.
So Cissy, what do you say to the argument that some people make that this is nothing more than a protection from the IRS for religious groups?
I think this is just a message sent by the president and a strong voice for us. I'm always for that more can be done to protect our religious freedoms, but I'm thankful for this voice and for the stand he has taken.
Sarah, the ACLU Executive Director, Anthony Romero, had a statement and said that this order was, quote, an elaborate photo op with no discernible policy outcome. Do you get the sense that the president authentically believes in this action, or, you know, the possible intention is just to shut down another of the remnants of the Obama administration?
I think that we can look to the president's past 100 days, which have been very anti-women, very anti-LGBTQ. It started on his first day, Inauguration Day. He wiped LGBTQ people from the White House webpage. He then wiped us from the Department of Labor, Department of State, took us off the 2020 census. So there's been this drumbeat of erasing LGBTQ people and persecuting women, especially around their health care, since day one. So this is a continuation of it. And this is, yes, it wasn't as sweeping and broad as it initially was set out to be, but that's coming down the pike. That's just a matter of time. And I just want to say that we really have to stop using religious freedom. Religious freedom is embedded in the Constitution. This is the opportunity to put targets on marginalized people's backs and use religion to do that and deny basic health care, deny housing, deny work opportunities. And so, you know, the narrative on this is off quite a bit, and I just want to really be careful about using religious freedom.
Sissy, when you hear what she's talking about and what the fears are, not just in the LGBTQ community, but in others, based on this religious freedom executive order, what could you say? What could you say to President Trump to make sure that, you know, as a Christian, that everybody is protected in their own right? Would you go to him on, say, Sarah's behalf to voice the concerns she has? Because those have nothing to do with the Johnson Amendment.
Well, I think we have to remember he was the first Republican candidate to mention the LGBT and the protection of them at the Republican National Convention. But, you know, religious freedoms, I disagree, is so important. It is the Christian foundation in this country that has allowed the tolerance of all religions to be practiced here in the United States of America. That is not the case around the world. And if you take that right away, it could be very dangerous, as we've started being persecuted already here on a very small scale. But around the world, I think Open Doors said that 255 Christians are being killed each month. Next week, my dad is holding a conference called the World Summit in Defense of Persecuted Christians in Washington, D.C. To bring awareness to this genocide that is happening. Mm-hmm. But we have to remember that it's here in the United States. It's the Christian foundation that allows the tolerance of all faiths to be practiced.
Okay.
But you take that away, other religions are not tolerant of that.
Sarah, you get the
They're
last
not
word.
tolerant of the LGBT.
So I just want to be really, really careful here, because there is no persecution going on religion here in the United States from this.
That is not true. You have a forest in Washington State.
So I just want to be careful how we use our words. You're talking globally now, we're talking nationally. And I also want to be really, really crystal clear around this, that this has been used as a weapon against LGBTQ people, and it has been for years and years and years and years. And no one, I'm a Christian woman, I married my wife in a church, I practice every Sunday, so I don't like to be, I am Christian, and I think that that is really, really important. And I don't want to go head-to-head with you on this, but what I do think is that what we want to be very, very careful about is discriminating against any marginalized group. Religion is baked into the Constitution of the United States of America, and it's a very important part of the fabric of this country. And I believe in protecting it as well, but this is not about protecting that.
At the end of the day, conversations certainly that have to be had, but interesting that there's no doubt we can see both of you feel